Have you ever wondered why some gardeners harvest wheelbarrows full of crisp, juicy cucumbers, while others struggle to keep a single yellowing vine alive? The difference almost never comes down to luck. It comes down to one crucial moment at the very beginning of the season. Today, we are talking about a secret that will make your cucumbers grow like absolutely crazy. I promise you, by the end of this video, the way you look at a simple cucumber seedling will change forever. We are going to dive deep into the secret of proper deepening. Yes, we are talking about how deep you actually put that plant into the ground. Most people think you just dig a shallow hole, drop it in, and hope for the best. But that is a recipe for disaster. So, let me ask you right now, do you plant your cucumbers shallow, or do you bury them deep? Think about it, and let me know in the comments. Because the truth about what happens underground will completely blow your mind. To truly understand why this method works, we have to look back at where cucumbers actually come from. Cucumbers originated in the hot, humid regions of South Asia, specifically India. In their natural wild habitat, they did not grow in neat, tiny little rows. They sprawled out over the warm, rich forest floor, constantly seeking moisture and nutrients. Over thousands of years of evolution, these plants developed a survival mechanism to anchor themselves and absorb as much food as possible. Their stems evolved the ability to sprout roots anywhere they touched moist soil. This historical background is the key to our secret today. When we take a cucumber and put it in a modern garden bed, we often forget its wild origins. We treat it like a delicate houseplant. But deep down in its genetic code, the cucumber is a sprawling, aggressive survivor waiting to unleash its root system. Understanding this wild, tropical ancestry is exactly what allows us to manipulate the plant into giving us a massive, almost uncontrollable harvest. Let us start by looking closely at the anatomy of a typical cucumber seedling. When you look at your young plant, you will notice a long, fragile green stem. At the very top, there are usually two small, oval-shaped leaves. These are called the cotyledons, or the seed leaves. Below them, the stem can sometimes look incredibly long and wobbly. This happens very often when seedlings are grown indoors and stretch out trying to find the sunlight. Many gardeners panic when they see this long neck on their plants. They think the seedling is ruined and will never grow into a strong, productive vine. But this long stem is actually a hidden opportunity waiting to be unlocked. It is packed with dormant root cells, just waiting to wake up. When this stem comes into contact with moist, warm soil, it undergoes a magical transformation. Tiny white bumps will begin to appear along the buried section. Within a matter of days, these bumps burst open and send out thick, aggressive white roots into the surrounding earth. By understanding this simple biological feature, you unlock the true potential of the plant. You are essentially turning a structural weakness into a massive underground advantage. Imagine turning a thin, fragile thread into a thick, unbreakable cable. Now, let us tackle the big myth about shallow planting. For generations, many gardening books have warned against burying cucumber stems. They claim that cucumbers are highly susceptible to stem rot and must be planted exactly at the same depth they were in their seedling pot. This is a massive misunderstanding that costs gardeners heavily. It is true that cucumbers hate sitting in cold, wet mud, but that does not mean they hate being buried. If you plant a tall, spindly seedling shallowly, it will be whipped around by the first strong wind. The base will snap, and the plant will die instantly. I want you to picture a tall tree with roots only going down 1 inch. It would fall over immediately. The same logic applies to your cucumber plants. By burying the stem properly, you are giving the plant a deep, secure anchor. The myth of shallow planting only applies if you have terrible, clay-heavy soil that never drains. If you have good, fluffy garden soil, shallow planting is the worst mistake you can make. It restricts the root zone and leaves the plant vulnerable to every single breeze and hot, sunny day. We need to break this old habit today. To really master this technique, we need to understand the concept of adventitious roots. You might have heard of this term if you grow tomatoes. Everyone knows you can bury a tomato plant up to its top leaves, and it will grow a massive root system. Well, cucumbers possess this exact same superpower, just with a few extra rules. Adventitious roots are simply roots that grow from any non-root tissue, like a stem or a leaf. When the cucumber stem senses total darkness and consistent moisture, hormones inside the plant trigger these adventitious roots to explode outward. Imagine thousands of tiny straws reaching out into the soil, grabbing water, nitrogen, and potassium. This secondary root system often becomes much larger and stronger than the original taproot the seed started with. It completely supercharges the plant. However, unlike tomatoes, cucumber stems are a bit more tender. They need the soil to be warm. If the soil is freezing cold, the adventitious roots will refuse to grow, and the stem will simply rot away. That is the crucial difference. Tomatoes will tolerate cold soil better than cucumbers. For cucumbers, warmth is the key to unlocking these extra roots. So, exactly how deep should you plant your cucumbers? We use something I like to call the cotyledon rule. Remember those first two small, oval seed leaves we talked about earlier? They are your ultimate guide. When you are transplanting your cucumber seedling into the garden, you want to bury the stem right up to the base of those two cotyledon leaves. You do not want the leaves themselves to touch the dirt, because soil-borne diseases can jump onto the leaves and infect the plant. You want the soil level to stop just ½ an inch below those bottom leaves. This gives the absolute maximum amount of stem contact with the earth, without burying the foliage. Think of it like putting the plant into a warm bath right up to its neck, but keeping its face perfectly dry. If you go too high and bury the leaves, the plant will suffocate. If you go too low, you miss out on all that extra root growth space. Finding that sweet spot just below the first set of leaves is the golden rule of cucumber transplanting. It is a simple visual marker that guarantees you are getting the depth absolutely perfect every single time. We must also talk about the absolute biggest danger of proper deepening, and that is stem rot. This is the reason so many people are afraid to bury their plants. Stem rot happens when the soil around the newly buried stem stays too wet and lacks oxygen. If you bury a cucumber stem in heavy, sticky clay that holds water like a sponge, the stem cannot breathe. The cells break down, a fungal infection sets in, and the plant collapses overnight. It looks exactly like someone pinched the base of the plant until it died. To avoid this, your soil must be well draining. Before you bury that stem, you must ensure the earth is loose and fluffy. I like to mix in generous amounts of compost and perlite to keep the soil airy. Imagine the difference between wrapping your leg in a tight, wet plastic bag versus a soft, breathable cotton towel. The roots need the cotton towel environment. They need moisture, yes, but they desperately need oxygen too. If your garden naturally has heavy clay, do not bury the stem deeply into the flat ground. Instead, build a raised mound of good, fluffy soil and bury the plant deeply inside that mound. This solves the drainage problem completely. Let us transition to something equally important. Soil temperature. I cannot stress this enough. Soil temperature is absolutely everything when it comes to burying cucumber stems. Cucumbers are heat-loving plants. If you take a warm seedling from your house and bury its stem deep into cold spring soil, it will go into severe shock. It is exactly like jumping out of a hot tub straight into a frozen lake. The plant will simply stop growing, turn pale yellow, and likely rot away. Before you even think about deepening your cucumbers, you must wait until the soil has warmed up significantly. The soil temperature needs to be at least 70 degrees Fahrenheit. If you live in a cooler climate, you can cheat the system. You can lay down black plastic mulch over your garden beds a few weeks before planting. The black plastic acts like a giant solar panel, absorbing the sun and heating the soil deep down. Only when the soil feels warm to the touch should you attempt the deep planting method. Patience here is absolutely vital. Waiting an extra week for the soil to warm up will result in a much bigger harvest than rushing to plant in cold dirt. Preparing the actual planting hole is the next step in our deepening journey. You do not just stab a trowel into the dirt and shove the plant in. You are creating a new, permanent home for a massive root system. I recommend digging a hole that is at least twice as wide and twice as deep as the pot the seedling is currently in. Once the hole is dug, do not just leave it empty. This is your chance to add fuel to the fire. Add a handful of rich, aged compost directly into the bottom of the hole. You can also add a small sprinkle of an organic, balanced fertilizer. Mix this fertilizer and compost into the loose dirt at the bottom of the hole so the roots do not burn. You are essentially setting a dinner table underground. When you place the plant in the hole and backfill the dirt up to the cotyledons, those original roots are immediately surrounded by a feast of nutrients. As the buried stem starts pushing out new roots, they will grow straight into this rich, prepared soil zone. This preparation turns a regular garden bed into a high-performance growing engine for your cucumbers. But what if your seedlings grew incredibly tall and leggy? Sometimes a cucumber stem is so long that digging a hole deep enough would mean placing the original root ball in the freezing, dead subsoil. If you dig too deep, you hit the bad dirt where nothing grows. This is where the trenching method comes in to save the day. Instead of digging a deep vertical hole, you dig a shallow horizontal trench. It is like digging a little grave for the stem. You gently lay the seedling down on its side in the trench. You keep the original root ball near the surface, and you lay the long stem sideways along the ground. Then you gently bend the top of the plant upwards, so the leaves are pointing at the sky, and you cover the horizontal stem with warm, fluffy soil. This is an absolutely brilliant technique. It keeps the entire root system in the top few inches of the soil, which is the warmest and most nutrient-rich zone. All those new, adventitious roots will grow straight down from the horizontal stem, creating a massive, wide anchor. It is the perfect solution for overgrown seedlings that you thought were totally ruined. Watering immediately after deepening is a delicate art. You have just put your plant through a major surgery, and it needs a drink, but it does not need a flood. The biggest mistake you can make right now is pointing a high-pressure hose directly at the newly buried stem. Blasting the stem with cold water will wash away the fluffy soil, expose the stem to the air, and cause massive stress. Instead, you need to use the moat method. Create a small, raised ring of dirt a few inches away from the stem, making a little circle around the plant. When you water, pour the water gently into this outer moat. This encourages the water to sink deeply into the ground, pulling the roots outward and downward. Keep the actual base of the stem relatively dry at the surface. By forcing the roots to reach out for the water, you are training the plant to build a wider, stronger foundation. It is like making the plant work out at the gym. If you hand feed it water right at the stem, it becomes lazy. If you put the water just out of reach, it grows strong and resilient, trying to find it. Once your cucumber is deeply planted and watered, you cannot just walk away. You must use mulch. Mulch is the absolute best friend of a deeply planted cucumber stem. After the soil has warmed up, putting a thick layer of straw, shredded leaves, or clean grass clippings around the base of the plant is mandatory. But here is the trick. You do not want the mulch to touch the actual stem. You leave a tiny 1-inch gap of bare soil right around the stalk. The mulch acts like a protective, insulating blanket for the newly expanding root system. It locks the moisture in the ground so you do not have to water as often. More importantly, it keeps the soil temperature perfectly stable. It protects those shallow new roots from baking in the blazing afternoon sun. Without mulch, the top layer of soil dries into a hard crust, suffocating the beautiful new roots you just worked so hard to grow. Mulching guarantees that the underground environment stays dark, damp, and perfectly cozy for maximum root expansion. It is the final seal on your planting process. Even though we just buried a large portion of the stem, we still need to think about air circulation above the ground. As your deeply planted cucumber begins to grow like crazy, it will put out massive, dinner plate-sized leaves. If these heavy leaves lay flat on the moist soil or the mulch, they will quickly develop powdery mildew or other fungal diseases. The ground is a factory for fungus. This is why, as the plant grows taller, you must eventually prune off the lowest leaves. Once the vine is about 2 feet tall, I highly recommend snipping off any leaves that are touching the dirt. Do not worry, you are not hurting the plant. By removing these bottom leaves, you create a clear tunnel of airflow right at ground level. The wind can sweep through, drying off the base of the stem and keeping the fungal spores away. You have given the plant an incredible deep root system underground. So now you must keep the above-ground portion clean and dry. It is a balance of deep earth connection and clean air circulation that creates the ultimate healthy vine. Let us talk about a microscopic secret weapon that pairs perfectly with deep planting. I am talking about beneficial fungi, specifically mycorrhizae. When you dig that deep hole or trench for your cucumber, sprinkling a little bit of mycorrhizal inoculant directly onto the stem and the roots is like giving the plant a superpower. These beneficial fungi form a symbiotic relationship with the cucumber roots. The fungi attach to the roots and grow out into the soil in a massive microscopic web. They act like millions of tiny extension cords, reaching nutrients and water that the cucumber roots could never reach on their own. In return, the plant feeds the fungi a little bit of sugar. When you bury a long stem, you are creating a huge surface area for these fungi to attach to. It is an absolute game changer. The deep planting technique combined with beneficial fungi creates an underground network so powerful, your cucumbers will easily survive droughts, ignore poor soil, and push out fruit faster than you can pick it. It is the ultimate biological hack for insane growth. The fundamental reason we want this massive root system is nutrient uptake. Cucumbers are heavy, greedy feeders. They grow incredibly fast, producing massive vines, huge leaves, and fruits that are mostly made of water. This process requires a tremendous amount of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. If you have a shallowly planted cucumber with a tiny little root ball, it is like trying to drink a thick milkshake through a tiny coffee stirrer. It is incredibly frustrating and slow. The plant simply cannot suck up nutrients fast enough to support big fruits. But when you bury that stem and encourage thousands of new adventitious roots, you are upgrading to a massive pipe. The plant can now gulp down nutrients at lightning speed. When you feed a deeply planted cucumber, the results are almost instantaneous. Within 48 hours of applying an organic liquid feed, you will see the leaves turn a deeper, richer green, and new flowers will explode all over the vine. More roots equal more food, and more food equals more cucumbers. It is simple math. Stability in high winds is another massive, often overlooked benefit of the deepening technique. If you live in an area that gets heavy summer storms, you know the heartbreak of walking out to your garden and seeing your precious plants ripped out of the ground. Cucumbers grow heavy. Once they are loaded with fruit and leaves, they act like giant green sails catching the wind. A shallow planted cucumber has no structural integrity. The leverage of the heavy top will snap the weak base right out of the dirt. But a cucumber planted deeply, right up to its cotyledon leaves, has an incredibly solid anchor. The buried stem hardens and thickens, acting like a concrete piling driven into the earth. Even if the trellis shakes and the wind howls, that deep root system will hold on like a mountain climber. You will not have to constantly go out and push soil back around the base of the plants after a storm. You are building structural strength from day one, ensuring your harvest survives until the end of the season. Drought resistance is something every gardener dreams of, and deep planting is the key to achieving it. During the peak of summer, when the sun is blazing and the rain stops falling, the top 2 inches of soil dry out completely. They become hot, dusty, and totally devoid of moisture. If your cucumber roots are entirely located in that top layer, the plant will wilt terribly every single afternoon, and eventually the cucumbers will turn bitter from water stress. Bitter cucumbers are ruined cucumbers. However, when you bury the stem deep into the earth, you force the main root system down into the cooler, permanently moist layers of the subsoil. While the surface bakes in the heat, your deep roots are happily drinking from the cool underground reserves. A deeply planted cucumber can easily survive missing a watering day, whereas a shallow plant might drop all its flowers and die. By taking the time to deepen your plants in the spring, you are buying yourself peace of mind for the hottest days of the summer. It is also important to understand the difference between planting deep in a greenhouse versus out in the open garden. If you grow in a greenhouse, you control the weather. You control the rain, the wind, and the humidity. In a greenhouse environment, you can afford to bury the stem very deeply without much worry, because you can ensure the soil never becomes a soggy, freezing mess. The controlled environment makes deep planting incredibly safe and effective. But out in the open garden, you are at the mercy of Mother Nature. If a week of heavy cold rain is in the forecast, burying your stems deeply right before the storm is a terrible idea. Outdoors, you must be far more observant of soil drainage and weather patterns. Always wait for a sunny, warm stretch of weather before transplanting deeply outdoors. Give the newly buried stem a chance to dry out slightly between rains so it can breathe and push out roots rather than sitting in a puddle and rotting. Context is everything. Now, let us address a very common problem that terrifies people trying this method for the first time: the yellowing leaves. A few days after you bury your cucumber plant deeply, you might go outside and notice that the lowest leaves are turning slightly yellow or drooping. Panic sets in. You think you have killed the plant. But wait, do not rip it out. A small amount of temporary shock is completely normal. The plant is redirecting all of its massive energy away from growing leaves and focusing entirely on pushing out hundreds of new roots along that buried stem. This takes a lot of effort, and the upper leaves might show temporary stress. As long as the very top of the plant, the new growth tip, remains crisp and green, the plant is perfectly fine. It is just building its underground foundation. Give it 7 to 10 days. Once the new root system engages with the soil, that temporary yellowing will vanish, and the vine will suddenly shoot upwards with explosive green energy. Patience through the shock phase is critical. Once your newly deepened root system is fully established, you need to know how to feed its massive new appetite. Because you now have a root zone that is twice the size of a normal plant, standard feeding schedules are not enough. The plant will consume nutrients rapidly. I recommend a two-part feeding strategy. First, use a slow-release granular organic fertilizer scratched into the surface of the soil around the moat we built earlier. This provides a steady, background supply of food for months. Second, you must use a fast-acting liquid feed like a fish emulsion or seaweed extract every 2 weeks once the plant starts flowering. The massive root system will absorb this liquid gold instantly, pumping it straight into fruit production. If you build a massive engine through deep planting, you cannot starve it. You have to provide the high-octane fuel it demands. If you feed it properly, a deeply planted cucumber will out-yield a shallowly planted one by 3 or 4 times over the course of the season. To give your newly buried stem the ultimate protection, you can use the power of companion planting. The bare soil right above your buried stem is a prime target for pests like the cucumber beetle, which love to lay their eggs at the base of the plant. To defend your vulnerable buried stem, plant a tight ring of radishes or marigolds around the cucumber. Radishes sprout incredibly fast, and their broad leaves quickly shade the soil over the cucumber roots, keeping it cool and weed-free. Marigolds emit a strong scent that actively repels many of the beetles and nematodes that want to attack the cucumber stem. By surrounding your deeply planted cucumber with these protective friends, you create a biological fortress. The companion plants act as living mulch and natural pest control, allowing the buried cucumber stem to focus 100% of its energy on growing massive roots, rather than fighting off attackers. It is a beautiful, natural synergy. Finally, let us talk about tracking the growth explosion. How do you know if your deep planting was a total success? In the first 2 weeks, you might actually think the plant is growing slower than usual. It is not getting much taller. Do not be discouraged. All the magic is happening underground. But right around week 3, something incredible happens. The plant hits a tipping point. The new, massive root system officially takes over, and the visible growth becomes explosive. You will literally be able to see the vine grow several inches in a single day. The leaves will become enormous, dark green, and thick. The stem will thicken to the size of your thumb. And most importantly, female flowers will start appearing at almost every single leaf joint. A properly deepened cucumber vine does not just grow, it aggressively dominates its trellis. When you see this sudden, violent surge of healthy green growth, you will know exactly why you took the time to bury that fragile little seedling so carefully. And there you have it. The ultimate secret to growing cucumbers that absolutely explode with growth. By simply understanding the wild nature of the plant, utilizing the cotyledon rule, and burying that stem deeply in warm, well-draining soil, you trigger a massive secondary root system. This one simple trick turns a fragile seedling into a drought-resistant, wind-proof, nutrient-absorbing powerhouse. It is the turning point between a mediocre harvest and giving away baskets of cucumbers to all your neighbors because you simply have too many. I hope this video completely changes the way you approach planting your vegetable garden this season. Thank you so much for watching and learning with us today. If this secret blew your mind, please hit that subscribe button, give this video a huge thumbs up, and share it with a friend who loves gardening. Now, I want to hear from you. What specific variety of cucumber are you most excited to grow this year using this deep planting method? Drop your answers down in the comments and let us get a great discussion going.